are you? Oh, Mama, so nice that you are online. And I'm going to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. You know, I started this practice of putting my phone on Do Not Disturb when I go to bed now. So as long as my two guys are home, then I just put it on Do Not Disturb because I was tired of getting text messages at 6 in the morning. Yikes. And I'm still getting text messages.
That's a good boundary to set, Fina.
Yeah. People wanting to know how to connect, which, you know, I'm sorry, I can't answer technical questions right now. But I'm glad you're here. Oh, Mama, thank you for joining us. Oh, Mama is going to sort of navigate the questions for us, and sometimes we'll engage with her to gauge her thoughts on some of the things that we're talking about. For the most part, she's helping navigate the questions and making sure that we spend time with the people that are here. Alba, again, thank you for joining us. I met Alba, what do you want to say, 6 years ago, maybe longer?
Oh my gosh, it's been that long.
It's been. So when I was getting ready to sell Color Magazine, I had this coach, Daniel Gutierrez, and he really helped me, not so much in terms of the business strategy for selling the company, but he helped me with my mindset. And so I was looking at enhancing our social media presence, and he suggested that I contact Alba. And I reached out to her, we connected in such a great way, and she really was instrumental on growing our social media presence from the get-go. I'm just looking at what we have in terms of chats. So thank you for that, because with your help, when Gatehouse looked at us as a company, they saw that our social media was really great. I mean, you helped increase it by 1,500, I think, followers on Twitter and so on. So I'll let you introduce yourself now, Alba.
Oh, thank you. I'm also very grateful for our business and personal relationships. I mean, you selling off to Gateway was a huge win. That's still something worth congratulating you over.
Thank you.
And for everyone either listening or watching, yeah, if you're a small to medium-sized business, don't underestimate the value of your analytics. You never know when that's going to come in handy.
But can you talk a little bit about that? What does that mean I mean, when I engaged you, I really didn't know about, because I was used to working with meta tags, but that's not the same as analytics that you look at in social media. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So, I mean, I think before we get into any sort of meaningful conversation regarding analytics, what I invite you and everyone else to consider is, what are my objectives? What is my overarching goal? Is it to sell a product? Is it to have lots of viewership over my content? Is it establishing my voice as a thought leader? Is it getting my personal brand out there? So for those of you who perhaps aren't entrepreneurial but work in a highly matrixed organization, for example, you can use your social media to leverage yourself as a thought leader and as an executive. So once you have that key objective decided, I think the next step is, okay, well, what metrics are really going to demonstrate that I'm achieving that? And that's what will influence which analytics tools you use. Sorry.
That's great.
So for instance, you don't want to over rely on your Facebook insights and analytics if what you're really trying to do is demonstrate that you have over 5,000 visitors a month to your blog. So aligning the metric with your goal.
So can we do that? Can we put a couple scenarios? Let's say I am looking at enhancing my, I want to be viewed as a thought leader. Let's say that that's my goal. How do I, Josefina Bonilla, go ahead and do that?
you hypothetical Josefina Bonilla or you actual Josefina Bonilla?
Well, let's say hypothetical.
Okay. Okay, so let's say a hypothetical Fina. Let's assume this hypothetical person works at a corporation and does not have her own business. So she's either an aspiring executive or is on her way to being an executive. That might be a really great time to start publishing articles on a platform like LinkedIn related to your area of expertise that show your credibility, but also offer value to the people reading it. So this is a good example of managing up and managing down how you would in real life. You want your content to appeal to people making hiring and promotional decisions, maybe a level or two above you. You also want to appeal to maybe the level that reports into you, so a level under you. And what you want to do is solve a problem. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so you have to know what exactly you're going to talk about. So you were going to.
Your audience is. I think that's more important than what you're going to talk about.
But do you have to have an expertise?
If you've made it this far as hypothetical Josefina, you probably have an area of expertise.
Okay. Oh, Mama, what do you have to say about that?
I'm just listening to this and I'm just kind of like, I mean, I post on social media every day and it was a matter of, changing the shift. Josephine, I already feel like you're a thought leader, but Alba, this is very interesting. And it's not just a matter of like posting what you to post. It's like, who's your audience that you're actually posting to? Because then those are the people that are going to keep sharing your message to make you more like relevant and dynamic in the situation.
Okay, go on.
I agree. Totally agree. So don't forget, like, even every interaction, you have an opportunity to add value. And I'm someone who, in the past, I have overgiven, which is where the corporate empath came from, right, to help me establish some boundaries. But people at this level have value that you can deliver, and you can deliver that to anyone. And what easier way to deliver it through content that people can read anytime, any place, and it doesn't require you being texted at 6 in the morning.
So let me just ask you this. Mm-hmm. So we have folks that are introverted, folks that are extroverted, and folks that don't really feel comfortable sharing information, but they are a wealth of information. What do you say to those folks?
Oof, it can be tough. That's going to be a personal journey that I've lived through, so I know it's hard. But the fact of the matter is that most of us are operating within some sort of corporate, either male-dominated or male-influenced organization. And at the core, at least in the United States, it's a capitalistic society. Most of our organizations are patriarchy dominated, right? So to me, that means that characteristics like extroversion, aggression, competition, whoever speaks the loudest, that tends to be valued in the workplace a lot. If you're introverted, you might get overwhelmed by too many people speaking at once. You may feel disproportionately drained after a meeting, whereas the extrovert next to you is like ready to go on a sales pitch. That's not where I have found in my experience that adjusting to try and match them makes sense. All that did was it left me burnt out and I had no value left to give. Instead, what I had to do was I essentially started modifying the workplace so that it worked for me. I started asking for more work from home days. If there was a business travel trip, I made sure I had my own room. I made sure my seat wasn't next to a colleague I knew so that I had time to rest or put my eye mask on or whatever, and I didn't feel obligated into talking, that sort of thing. It was a start. And then what I did after that was I kind of strategically planned my days. So on days where I had big meetings where I knew I had to be either leading them, running them, or speaking to them, I was prepared. I would schedule them first thing in the morning. I wouldn't wait until the afternoon when I knew I'd be exhausted. But I did have to play the extroversion game. I did have to say, I'm willing to compete in this area. I can modify it to help me get there, but I can't change it.
And I want to talk more about that. But before we do, because I do want to talk about that, I want to talk about your company. But before we do, let's go back to the strategies that different people employ with different social media. We were talking about the hypothetical Josefina. And
right now, she's introverted, she still has to write.
So how does she overcome the fear of exposing too much of herself, which I think is something that's very common?
I do agree that it's really common. I also think it goes back to knowing your audience. You're not trying to be a thought leader on how you maintain your friendships or how often you like to snuggle with your dog in the morning. I mean, you're becoming a thought leader in an area of expertise that has nothing to do with your personality, right? Like, focus there. Keep it business. It doesn't have to be intrusive. Now, you do usually want to adopt a tone that's at least approachable, but beyond that, just be you and be professional you.
Okay, and how would that situation be for, say, a small company that is trying to increase their social media presence?
Sure. So, if you're a small company, I think niche is rich. I think getting the smaller you get, the more focused you get. You don't have the ad budget or the keyword research budget to compete with Coca-Cola if you're a small to mid-sized bottler in Ohio. But what you can do is knowing your market, consider what subjects or topics are most valuable to them. Take the opportunity to educate, and by educating, be seen as a thought leader.
Okay, so if I'm a small business, I love that. Niche is rich. Can I take it and use it?
So I have to give credit to one of my earliest business coaches, Shanda Sumter said that.
I'm sorry, the name?
Shanda Sumter.
Sumter.
She was the first, one of my early business coaches, and she was the first to teach me that.
I see that Omama is muted. I'm sorry, Omama. I don't know how that happened.
No, I muted it because there was an echo in the background, and I don't know what that echo is. So that way there's no,
I see.
Yeah. So I don't know what the echo is. So sorry.
So that was me unmuting you. Okay, so if I'm a small business, I am going to know what my specialty is, my niche, which that's how you start a small business. You're trying to offer something. You're trying to answer a problem or have a solution to a problem, right? And then you are talking about subjects that would resonate to people who you believe are your customers, correct?
Absolutely.
And what else did I write here? You said something about elevating the conversation. Or did that make that up in my head?
I love it. I did not say that, but it sounded so good. I was like nodding my head.
I wrote it. So maybe that was a conversation to you. So I'm thinking if you have, for example, a small business that focuses on accounting, right? Then some of the conversations as a thought leader in that space, you could be talking about how to, 5 tips to better prepare for taxes, or 5 tips to better collect money. So those are the things.
Absolutely. And just keep in mind, again, going back to who's your audience, because 5 tips for an enterprise level company are going to look very differently to someone who's a freelance photographer or someone who has 5 employees versus someone who has 30 employees, right? So getting really clear on who is your audience, who are you serving, who do you have the opportunity to have the biggest impact on, and creating your thought leadership around that.
Okay, okay. I'm sorry, Mama, I keep unmuting and muting you. Did you have something you wanted to add to that? Because you run a small business as well.
Yeah, so I have a question. When someone writes a book, because there's a lot of people that are writing books, and do they automatically become a thought leader? Like, how does someone automatically become a thought leader? Is it the content they're putting out, or is it a book, or is it the people that they're highlighting to?
That's a really good question. So I'll address the first part about the book, right? So the content medium isn't going to matter. To me, it doesn't matter as much. You can write a book, and if no one reads it, you're not a thought leader. You can publish a blog, and if no one reads it, you can create a podcast, and if no one, you're not a thought leader. I think thought leadership happens when you get engagement and you get feedback from the engagement that says, hey, I'm valuable. Now, to the other parts of your question, I'm blanking. What was it? You asked regarding the book, and you asked, what was it, Mama?
How does someone like instantly become a thought leader?
Yes.
Is there an
instantly?
Unfortunately, now you did earlier mention something really important though. You said, does it matter who you're including in your conversation? And the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're a small business, or if you're just starting to build out your thought leadership, and you are being associated with so-and-so or such and such company in your space that already has credibility, they already have brand loyalty, you can leverage that brand equity into your own. It's kind of no different than being in high school and like sitting at the cool girl table. Like, you might be marginally cool too. It's kind of like that. Now, so I do think that is a good tactic, like leveraging your network, leveraging other small businesses that maybe don't offer the same service or product that you do, but offer a complementary product or service, and partnering with them to leverage brand equity together. That's one avenue. For most people, it doesn't happen instantly. I mean, unless, I don't know, you get on America's Got Talent and all of a sudden you have 30,000 followers. That is possible, but for most of us building our brands, from the ground up, it's more about, I think, being a thought leader to your customers first, getting repeat business from the same people, getting larger scale projects from the same people, testimonials, referrals. That tells me you're on your way to building thought leadership. And once you have enough of a quote unquote following, if you want to capitalize on that and write a book, by all.
So what you mentioned though is how and I'm always careful how I use this word, how to leverage your network. Because if you, for example, if I'm having a conversation with you and I have, I don't know, 10,000 followers in one of the social media platforms, by you mentioning or me mentioning you or you or I, automatically I'm able to leverage your followers to be able to pick some of them up, correct?
Absolutely, and that's just one tactic of like what I imagine are hundreds, right? You could have someone email their list on your behalf, promoting let's use the webinar as an example. If I had a 20,000, 30,000 person email list, could I have emailed them and included the link to this webinar? Absolutely. And you would have then been leveraging my brand equity to help boost your own.
I like
so
that.
That's, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is almost the basis for affiliate marketing, right?
Right.
Now,
and network marketing as well.
Absolutely.
Because
so there's hundreds of tactics out there that are using this principle.
So one of the things for one of the events that I ran while I was with Color, we asked the audience how many of the audience had side hustles. And I would say about 90% of the women in the room said they had side hustles. Whether it was that they spoke at events, that they provided D&I training, that they did marketing on the side, that they did whatever that was. So how do you navigate having your corporate role, right? Because the corporate has all these requirements on how you show up, and navigate your own brand that you want to be able to, maybe you do eventually want to leave corporate, or maybe corporate would benefit from your brand, you know? So can you talk maybe how to do that? How would I do that? I want to learn how to do that.
Hey, that's really legitimate. That is super legitimate. I think first and foremost, it's going to be directly influenced by who you work for. Some companies are on you like this. Some give you more space and room. It depends on your industry. I'd say your career trajectory, what your bosses and your bosses' expectations are of you. That's certainly something to keep in mind before you start flaunting your side hustle everywhere. I think regardless of where you work, big corporations love it if the side hustle includes you talking about them and your successful career there, and you name them in your bio and you give them credit where credit's due. Most of them are not going to be upset about that. Now, it goes without saying that if you're out there speaking badly about your company or flaunting a product that competes with your company, that's probably not the best avenue. But if you're talking solely about building a personal brand outside of your 9-to-5 personas, so that if you ever were furloughed or laid off, or we're living in uncertain times right now. A lot of people who weren't expecting to get laid off are laid off. How do you leverage that side hustle into getting a new gig? I think that's where there's a lot of opportunity.
I'm sorry, Alba. Plus, I think that for many of us, we have a multitude of side hustles, right? So not only do you have the corporate, some of us have a corporate job, but some of us have a small business that maybe we're the corporate empath, but we also do marketing consulting, and so how do you navigate where to show up and how on social media?
Yikes. Oh gosh, that is a good question.
Right?
Yeah, way to go. I think it's gonna come down to what stage of growth are you in each company. So right now I'm launching two. I'm launching two, so they're both in early stage. They both need a lot of my time and attention, but only one of them needs a lot of marketing. The other one, it needs relationships. So focus on what stage of growth are you in, and what is the function, meaning is it marketing, operations, legal, which function is going to help you get a little further along before you just start dumping all of your time and energy into marketing across the board.
So how about this? How about this scenario? Say I'm running a successful company like Right Media, but I also want to sell shoes. Like two different personalities, right? To sell shoes, it requires different visibility. However, selling shoes can benefit from a different type of audience than Right Media. So Right Media is more professionals. God, that would be hard to show up as Josefina Bonilla for both. So what do you do?
So on the public or customer facing side, you're going to have separate social media accounts for each venture, right? You're going to have Right Media Social. You're going to have, shoes social. In real life, when you're talking to people like me, and I'm like, gosh, I'm gonna be at this conference for like 4 hours and I don't have shoes to wear, or last time I got blisters and I ended up taking my shoes halfway during the thing, which I do, by the way. And you're like, oh, well, I'm having these shoes. And girl, I gotta tell you, they are the most comfortable shoes I've ever worn. Now I'm like, oh, Josefina of Right Media, who I know goes to conferences, she does conferences, is endorsing this shoe. Send me a link, Fina. What's the site? What's the handle? So public facing marketing, right? They have the handles, the usernames, the brand presence has to be separate for each brand. In other words, your personal LinkedIn profile, if it's out hustling 5 different brands, I'll be honest, I'm gonna get confused no matter how well I know you. And if I'm someone who follows you peripherally and I thought you were a thought leader in one space and now you're selling shoes, I'm gonna also get confused. It could dilute your brand a teeny bit. But in real life relationships, I think that's your opportunity to speak to your entire ecosystem of entrepreneurial hustles, however many you have, right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
or
that makes sense, because I think that we are challenged to, especially if you're, a Renaissance person, where, you want to do a variety of different things. And, I can't show up as the shoe salesperson while I'm talking to my corporate clients about the Roar conference, for example. I can't. But, I know that those are the same people that would buy my shoes. I just to be clear, I do not have a shoe brand or anything like it, but I'm just saying, it's an example.
You know what? You could work out a B2B deal and say, let my shoe company sponsor part of this event, right? I mean, you have focus on what's going to make your bottom line better, not what's going to make you feel better, right? So like if you have an opportunity to sell some shoes because you have strong enterprise level relationships, by all means leverage it. I'm speaking more to the customer. Okay. Customers will get confused. So like if they see your LinkedIn profile all of a sudden turn into shoes galore.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be confusing.
And that will dilute your thought leadership. Thought leadership is like, it's like you're making a deposit into a brand equity piggy bank, right? In the way you speak, in the way you dress, in the way you show up, in the way you help others, in the way others talk about you when you're not there. And maybe the shoe thing has some opportunity to fit into that. It just can't take over that, because then you start diluting your equity and you start building equity in something else, which is now the shoes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was actually speaking to a mama about this a few days ago, right, Mama?
I feel like this whole conversation is about me right now.
Oh no.
It's interesting, and like this is something that I've battled with a lot, because I do finances, and then I also help with like social media, and it's a matter of like, well, what message do you want to portray? And something that I've heard from like successful speakers, as in like a Tony Robbins, for example, I'm just going to use him as an example, right? Where you could still have multiple businesses, but you got to be successful in one before you start shining in the next. And that way you can be the, like a thought leader in different conversations, but you got to make that brand stick out a lot. So this conversation, I'm just kind of like, oh, this is perfect. Because I still haven't made my mark yet in the financial space, but I'm also putting my name out there for like the social media space too. And it's 2 different avenues, but it's also in a matter of just kind of like, hold on, I'm still here doing both. So this is great. I'm loving it.
Now, I'm sorry, go ahead, Alba.
Oh, I just want to ask Omama a quick question. I imagine you have 2 different brands for your 2 companies, right, Omama?
Yeah. So Tomorrow's Prosperity Group, what is the like financial aspect, but what I'm looking to do is to brand the marketing piece to go into the Tomorrow's Prosperity group. So there will be a whole new branding thing to bring both the financial and the marketing together, because I want to be able to cater to the entrepreneurs. So just the rebranding of how the business is going to go.
Together.
Correct.
Rather than pushing them. Okay, got it. That's a solution. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Alba, I want you to talk a little bit about your business, the Corporate Empath.
See, and now I'm going to sound like you and Omama. I'm going to be like, well, I got this business and I got this one. And I don't have
But that's the reality. I've met so many women of color that have a multitude of side hustles. They show up in the corporate company as an executive, and then they also are, you know, authors, or they're, you know, shoe owners. And, you know, I definitely, do you remember Taryn Rose? She had a brand of shoes that she sold, but Taryn Rose was a successful orthopedic surgeon.
That makes so much sense.
And she would always wear heels to work. And she would say, you know, I love my heels, but they're not as comfortable, and I'm standing on them for X amount of. So she created, based on her knowledge of the body and her feet, and she loved high heels. She created this brand that was phenomenal. She eventually sold it, but she was really well known for that brand. She then, you know, as you know, whenever you create a brand with your name on it and you sell that brand, you're in essence selling your name. So when she went back to start another company, she couldn't use Taryn Rose. But anyways, so we all have these other passions that we're trying to run. So I want to talk about Corporate Empath, and then I want you to tell me about your side hustle. And I know sometimes side hustle shifts, but talk about the Corporate Empath.
It's a dance. It's absolutely a dance. So the Corporate Empath came out of I have a 13-year career under me in marketing and advertising. And I got to engage with some of the world's biggest brands. You know, it was really an awesome, awesome run. It also burned me out. I gained 20 pounds. I gave myself TMJ. I didn't get to sleep in for like 2.5 years while I was also in business school. And it didn't end well for me, right? I'm 35 and I walked out of that experience feeling like, okay, I hit my target money line dollar amount that I wanted to hit as a professional, but it cost me my health, and I'm not even like midlife yet. I'm like almost there. So that's when I started thinking about, I can't be the only person feeling this way. More specifically, I can't be the only empath working in corporate. Like, so for people listening, empaths are people who literally feel physical, unspoken energy more strongly than the average person. So if I walk into a contentious meeting and there's two people who aren't outwardly fighting, but I know there's a lot of tension, I'll walk out of that meeting feeling a lot of tension, for instance. And so I started doing some research, not only into what is an empath, but how can people like me be successful in a system that doesn't support our way of living. And that's really where the idea was born. It was like a service mentality, like how can I help? And there's absolutely like a leadership component to it, you know, everything from like negotiating to managing up to influencing and building a team, because empaths get exhausted, we get drained. So if you're like me, if you were running like a 30-person team.
Now, how is that different than an introvert, an empath?
So an introvert is someone who recharges by being alone, whereas an extrovert recharges by conversation and being around other people. It's how do you energize, essentially. Someone who is an empath can't control how they how intensely they feel what would otherwise be a subtle energy to someone else.
So are most not corporate, but empaths also introverts?
That's a really good question. So studies show that people who are highly sensitive people, HSPs, the majority of them, I want to say like 70% of them are introverted. The studies that are available regarding empaths show that there's no discrimination, that it's about 50-50. Half introverts, half extroverts, half men, half women.
I see. Okay.
So yeah, but to be completely honest, and the corporate empath isn't even past soft launch yet. I mean, it's still just such a baby nugget, but already taking on consulting work, because as someone who's a digital marketer, I didn't wait until all my assets were up and ready. The website is still being done, the branding is still being done, the messaging is still being written. I had a casual conversation like this one with someone else, and they decided they wanted to work with me. I didn't wait. I got the PayPal out. I said, let's do this. The first thing I did was write my contracts. I wrote my contracts before I started any of this other work, because I knew it would take longer. And what a small business needs out of the gate is top line revenue. So that's where I focused on having my stuff together. The long-term vision for the corporate empath is to not take on consulting clients at all. Nothing in person. That's too time consuming, and I really need my energy for some other ventures that I'm working on. The idea is to make the corporate empath a passive income revenue stream through my digital channels, where I create content, the value is there, but very few people are going to have direct one-on-one access with me.
So how would Right Media engage with you?
So, okay, for every entrepreneur out there, you should have a B2B revenue stream. That's where the money really is, right? Like, if you can add a enterprise level component to your service offerings, that's really where you'll have opportunity to really fluff up your numbers each quarter. Right Media, if you wanted me to do team leadership workshops or team building workshops or trainings, that's one way. If you guys had an executive who you were getting a lot of negative feedback on, who perhaps needed to leverage empathy more in the workplace and more really develop people skills and relationship building skills, there's an executive coaching opportunity there. A smaller part of the business, but certainly the strongest part of the business, is going to be the marketing, obviously. Some people will ask for marketing. How can we change our messaging? How can we improve our tone? How can we launch a campaign that shows that we are socially responsible, or that we are including women and minorities in decision making? That sort of thing is where I'm seeing most of the interest come in, which makes sense because of my existing network, if that makes sense. So does that answer your question? You're on mute.
I did. I just muted myself because there was some background stuff happening. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm thinking, as a small business starting out, I can certainly see how I could use the corporate empath for the marketing piece, because I am a small business. I'm not looking for how to be more sensitive to others, right?
It depends on it depends on your team. So you personally aren't going to have this problem, but we've all worked with a toxic boss or a toxic coworker. And we all know what that does, not only to us as individuals, but our entire team and our entire division's profitability. I mean, the millions of dollars that companies lose each year, Fortune 500 companies lose each year to disengaged employees, is really sad and completely avoidable. Would they have better people leading their teams and building their teams? So certainly, because I know you personally, I know that's not something you are struggling with, but that doesn't mean that other small businesses aren't. I mean, family businesses, boy, we could really help them, because those people don't have a choice. They have to work with who they have to work with, or they have to go get a different job. And what you'll see a lot of the time in family businesses is a lot of toxicity or negativity. And so how do we overcome that together to get them bigger profits, bigger margins?
Wow, that's interesting. Oh, Mama, do you have something you want to add?
So I have a question for people that are starters, that every few years they start a business and then they sell it. Like, that's just the nature of who they are. And so let's just say that they started A business, and then they're doing like B business and all these different things. And that's who they are. Like, every few years they sell their business.
Are you talking about me, oh Mama? Are you talking about me?
No, I'm thinking like specifically of, like, so I'm a brand ambassador for Founders Live, and there's a lot of businesses that I hear that are absolutely phenomenal, that every few years they go and they start a new business, which is amazing. Like, I love that. So they're technically rebranding themselves every so often. What message are they coming off as a thought leader for that rebranding? Take people, for example, like athletes that who I think of right now is like LeBron James, right? So LeBron James created the school, and he's helping all these students now in Ohio. He's trying to create the generation for the next generation. How do you rebrand yourself to be like, hey, like, for example, I'm still this athlete, but I'm doing this other thing, and like every few years they're doing this other thing or starting a new business. How do you portray your message as that?
But didn't you talk about this a little bit before, that you have to be, in order to, sorry, oh Mama, that I'm answering
No, you're
part
good.
of it.
No, you're good.
I think Alba said that in order for you to be able to promote another business or another brand, you have to have strength in your own brand first.
Correct.
And be able to leverage that. But go ahead, Alba. Sorry.
No, that's exactly it. I mean, LeBron James, we're not going to forget that he's the basketball player LeBron James ever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there is Michael Jordan. I just...
No.
And Kobe Bryant. Yeah.
But we're never going to forget that LeBron James is a basketball player.
Right.
Correct.
Like, that's never going to go away. No
So
matter
that's
what.
his...
Unless he does something terrible.
So he's using his brand to promote all the other side hustles he's got.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Maybe?
He's leveraging his primary brand equity, LeBron James, the basketball player, into these other businesses. Jay-Z, P. Diddy, they've all, everyone does the same thing. Halo has been really successful at that too. But no one's going to forget that she was J-Lo from the block, even though that was like 20 years ago.
Mm.
None of us are going to forget that Sean Combs was at one point Puff Daddy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, to stay with the LeBron James example, he established his credibility as a basketball player. He made compensation that further enforced that image. And now he's using his compensation to do other things. Now, if he were to retire from basketball and say, I'm going to be a motivational speaker and I'm going to travel the world teaching everyone how they can overcome adversity and become successful, he has the credibility to back that up. And because he is focusing all his time and energy there, that may be his new brand leader, thought leadership.
Mm.
That very well may be it. It can shift. You don't have to stay with the same thought leadership. Just every time you shift, remember that it's building brand equity. You are kind of starting over again. And the idea, I think, is to leverage as much of your pre-existing thought leadership as you can into the new venture.
Perfect.
Alba, I'm going to switch again back to social media and branding, because I know that's a piece of the work that you do. Also, do you think you can have your website is?
My website's not even up.
Okay.
I have a LinkedIn profile. We're
that's right, you
at
said
the
that.
at the Corporate Empath, and that's it right now. Yeah.
Okay. So when you are marketing, or say I want to be a speaker, that's my new objective. I want to speak at different events, so I need to create a persona of a thought leader in this space, right? Let's say diversity and inclusion. And so my first step, and I'm just going back to some of the things that you said, that's my goal. I want to be able to get speaking engagements, paid speaking engagements. They're important.
Yep.
And so I want to then start creating content to support my knowledge of diversity and inclusion.
Yep.
And so one of the things that you and I did together with Color, when we were building Color, the social media platform for Color, was that we took stock of where we were with all the platforms. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the rest. And we listed how many followers, how many we were following. And then based on the content, we saw the shift of how each content resonated with the people and created increase. So we started week to week, and then we ended up doing day to day to see what that increase is. Is that what you still recommend for companies and individuals?
And going back to the goal was to establish yourself as a thought leader, or no,
Yes.
to get speaking engagements, paid
Yes.
speaking engagements. Okay.
Yes.
Daily is probably going to be too much for most people. I mean, you and I were doing we were tracking metrics for a very specific reason at that point. But broadly speaking, I think monthly or weekly is a good cadence for keeping up with your metrics. You want to look at numbers like top line growths, like numbers of followers. Are they going up? Okay, fine. But you want to also look at what content is getting the most engagement. What is prompting the most questions? What is prompting the most curiosity or interest in what you're saying? Going back to that content, you might say, clearly, this is a topic I should speak about and that I should get paid to speak about, because a lot of people are asking questions about it. When you're applying for speaking engagement or soliciting your forums, like, you should really include samples of the content you write if they allow it, because you want to show them what kind of problems you're solving and what kind of solutions you can bring to their audience. So using those metrics tells you, what are people curious about? What don't they understand? What did I make confusing? Do I need to change how I speak about this or write about this?
And how can you gauge that, whether or not they understand something?
Well, because the questions will look different, right? So if the question, let's say you publish something and people are asking you questions about regulation. Let's say you wrote something about regulation in your industry and how that's going to affect diversity and inclusion. I don't know if that's even possible, but let's say that was the thing. If they're asking you questions about the regulation piece, they're curious about the subject with the right answer. If they're saying, hey, what did you mean by blank? Or if they're disputing what you said, actually, you get a lot of smarty pants online. Actually, that's not possible, yada, yada. Then maybe the way you spoke about it or the way you wrote about it wasn't the most clear.
Okay. So analytics, super important, the cadence in which you look at where you are in your social media, in your brand awareness to other folks. and then shifting your message based on how it's being received by others.
Absolutely.
See, I'm going to go back and I'm going to start looking at all our channels to see how we're doing.
Yeah, you should be able to make some decisions based off what you see.
And how, I know there's no quick fix. There's no quick fix. But what would you say has been not the quickest, but the most effective way to increase your follower base?
Oof. As a company or as an individual?
Let's do it as a company first, and then I want you to answer both.
I mean, I think if you have budget to hire someone to do it for you, by all means, go ahead, because the tactics are really time consuming for a C-suite type person. I mean, those are not details that you want clouding your brain. If you're a startup and you have to do it yourself, it's just understand it's a time commitment. You have to be engaging in those platforms. So if someone retweets your comment or your post, your tweet, make sure you like it, maybe respond to them. If you're on Instagram, you want to start looking for accounts that offer a similar product or service as yours, and maybe start following some of them, some of their followers, inserting yourself into comments conversations. Same on Facebook. If you're offering a service, you should probably, it depends on your stage of growth. That's my asterisk for everything. Maybe Facebook is the most effective way for you to engage on social media, where you start collecting your own group of people and answering questions and doing Facebook Lives and doing things that way. So at the highest level, choose not which platforms you like, which platforms are your target market in.
Which is very different.
Where are
Which is very different, because I personally, say that one more time.
Because I'll be honest, I don't like any of them. I hate being on I'm not on social media as an individual, hardly at all, because I do this for a living and I just
I personally love LinkedIn, right? But I do also know the value of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and I really don't enjoy those at all. And one of the things that I remember when we were working on our project that you worked with us on, Facebook was a really important part of that mix, and even the ads. I mean, some of the basic stuff that we really didn't know, which was what, it has to be 25% less words than anything. It can't occupy, what is it, 25% of the space? Can't be words.
Images.
Yes.
Yeah, and they change that stuff every day, so it may not be the same anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we would try an ad and they would kick it out, and we would try another ad. It was just really very, very time consuming, and that's why we brought you on board to kind of manage all that for us.
And that's just creating the content. That part that you just spoke to is the creating of the content for the ad, the copy and the design, as well as whatever links we're sending people to. The back end of that is geo-targeting and retargeting and allocating budgets for certain audiences, and which audiences do we pay more for and which ones do we not want to pay more for, and which audience should we really not be targeting on Facebook, because we should be targeting them on LinkedIn or Twitter. I mean,
you said geo-targeting. What is that exactly?
Geo-targeting is targeting ads by location. So let me think. So Florida, you're not going to target someone to buy a winter coat in Florida. Unlikely, right? You're more likely to target regions where there's a need for a winter coat, things like that.
Okay. I knew what it was, just in case somebody else didn't.
Oh, clear.
Mama, do you want to add anything? And we are getting close to our time to end the session, but I want to give Mama a second to.
I absolutely hate social media as well too.
And she's good at it, like you, Alba.
Yeah.
She's very good in social media.
As much as I'm on it, I feel like the reason why I hate it is because I feel like we have become such a social media like society that we sometimes forget to engage. And it's like, if you didn't post it, then it didn't really happen. That's why I don't like it. But I think it's very important for brands to continue to say who they are, what they're doing, what's going on. Individually, that doesn't necessarily like, it doesn't need to be portrayed what you're doing, but social media as a business should definitely be leveraged. As an individual, it's like, well, what kind of message are you saying? And with like the whole epidemic of like what's happening right now with the world, right? I'm seeing a lot of negativity, but I'm also seeing a lot of people trying to shine some light. So it's a matter of asking yourself, because you still have your own personal brand as well too, what kind of message do you want to put out to the world?
And be sensitive, be sensitive that, I started these webinars as a way to connect us like we're doing here. But there's a lot of stuff going out there. You have to be sensitive with the environment that we're in, how you're going to post things, right, Alba?
Yeah, and look, make no mistake, social media for the individual, like that's not even, it's a thing, right? But that was never the point. The reason Mark Zuckerberg is a billionaire with a B is because of the data and the advertising capabilities. Like, make no mistake, social media is a marketplace, no matter which platform you're on. So the fact that we get to post pictures of our families or our dogs or whatever is just like, you know what I mean? It's collateral.
Yeah.
So regarding the messaging, it's been interesting. I've been watching a lot of brands and trying to get a sense for how they're managing themselves. I've seen some brands do things really, really well. And then I've seen some brands be really, really tactless. I was targeted for, let me think, just yesterday, I won't mention the brand name, I was targeted for a sofa. And the copy read, since you're inside anyway, why not buy this $10,000 sofa so that you can really enjoy your quarantine?
Wow.
And I thought, the most obtuse thing I've ever, no, not ever, but that was pretty obtuse. They really missed the mark there. Now, this ad ran on Instagram. They had a beautiful photo. The sofa looked beautiful. The room had plants. It was sunny. Because it was Instagram, I think it'll get a lot of engagement because the photo was so appealing. It was beautiful. But the copy missed the tone. Similarly, I saw a CBD company send an email blast out that was like, hey, are you in a lot of pain because you're so stressed out about all this corona stuff? Like, our CBD can like strengthen your immune system. And I thought, that's a false claim, first and foremost. Second of all, your bottle of CBD is like $300, and a lot of Americans are losing their jobs right now. So for you to pitch it as a medical relief aid and then leverage the virus as the reason for someone's pain, it just felt tactless to me.
Yes. And I have seen that as well. I've seen
Yeah.
that. But I've seen brands do it, like you said, they've done it well. And they do acknowledge what we're going through, but then they shift gears and they talk about some things that make sense for us.
Look, it's good for the economy, for businesses of all sizes to stay in business, and for people who have the income available to them to be able to invest it however they choose. I've seen some brands not acknowledge it at all, and I think when in doubt, pretend it's not a thing.
So we've got 1 minute. What do you want to leave us with?
Oh, just be kind to everyone on social media, in real life. Now's the time to add value to anyone who needs it. Leverage your business expertise. This will end, and people will remember it when you help them.
Super. Well, thank you, Alba. Thank you, Omama, for being here with us. And we'll see you tomorrow with Alba in Amador at 1 o'clock. Thank you, Alba.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye, Josefina.